I just feel so much better today. Like the last few videos, I was not doing great. I had people ask me if I was okay, and I was watching the videos. I was like, I was not. Good morning, Reptilians. Welcome back to the channel. I'm Elle, and this is Elle's Reptiles. This is the new space of Elle's Reptiles. I need to hang something up over that to cover it. I'm not painting that. This is Elle's Reptiles. So as you can tell, we have moved. And in last week's video, it was like a vlog style video. If you saw it, I kind of quickly went over the move and getting the animals here and all that cool stuff. But for this week's video, I had a question on Patreon about whether or not I was going to actually talk about the process of moving the various animals, and I thought that that is what we would do here. Before we get started, this video is sponsored by Gecko, so make sure to stay until the end of the video to find out all about this awesome company. Let's get started. Okay, so the very first thing, let's quickly just talk about how I personally moved things and like what my move entailed, and then we'll kind of go into detail about different strategies you could use, different animals, things like that. So I moved I should have been better prepared. Okay, so I moved 3 snakes, 4 lizards, and a tarantula from North Alabama all the way to Iowa. That is actually only about an 11-hour drive. I think it's like 11 hours, maybe closer to 12 with stops, but that is what our move entailed. And for our move, we weren't able to just move directly from one house to the next. So we actually had to use temporary tanks in a temporary house. So that actually made the move a little bit easier, which we will get into later. Okay, so let's talk about strategies. So I think the most common probably strategy is just to move them in Sterilite bins. The big lockable Sterilite bins. Lockable is important, especially for snakes, because they can just push up if they don't have the little clip locks. The big black Sterilite bins lock in place really good. Make sure that when you use those Sterilite bins, there are air holes, or even better, if you could like drill holes in the top and put some sort of screen. That might not always be best depending on what animal it is. Like if it's an animal that's gonna be able to push through that screen, to break that screen, definitely something to keep in mind, especially when we start talking about bigger snakes. But make sure there's some sort of ventilation, some sort of air flow for those animals, because especially if these animals are going to be in these bins for hours upon hours, you need to make sure that they can get oxygen. Obviously, the whole process of moving animals is going to be so much easier if you're just moving down the street. You just load them up, take them, done. Super easy. But for longer moves, you're definitely going to want some sort of transportation for those animals. You also have the option of using like small animal carriers, like bunny carriers, cat carriers, things like that. Those work fantastic for lizards, animals that aren't as skittish. If your animal is very skittish when you reach in at their face and they're going to try to bite you, those cat carriers are not going to be great for you because you have to reach in and grab the animal out. So definitely keep that in mind. But those are really good because they zip and they already have lots of ventilation, lots of air holes, but those don't stack like Sterilite bins stack. So depending on how many animals we're transporting, that could be important information. You also potentially have the option of moving the animal in their tank still. We did this for only 2 animals. We did it for the tarantula and for the baby crested gecko. But super, super important. Number 1, you need to make sure that that tank can't just open. Make sure that it has some sort of locking mechanism, that in some way you can verify that it's going to stay closed. Also, the tank needs to be very secured in your vehicle. Make sure it's not going to topple over. That is crazy important. Make sure it's not going to topple over on them. And you need to make sure that there's no big heavy things in that tank. So remove any driftwood, remove any hides, remove anything that is heavy and could potentially squish your animal. Even the water bowl, I would take the water bowl out. The only thing that I would leave in there are like, maybe if there's like a pothos, or not in a pot planted in there, and you can leave the substrate in there, but I wouldn't leave anything else, because again, if you were to hit a bump or have to slam on your brakes or something, they could potentially be squished, and we don't want that, obviously. So, but if you can transport them in those tanks, a lot of times that will make things a lot easier because they have less transition to do. It's not going from this to the Sterilite bin back to the tank. You're just putting the tank where it goes, and they're there. So it will make things a little bit easier on them, and it'll make things a little bit easier on you because you don't have to do all the extra steps. But only do this if it is safe to do this. That is so incredibly important. And just extra things that may or may not need to be done. You may potentially, depending on how long you're gonna travel, you might need some sort of extra heating. I would just suggest like big heat pads to go under the bins that like adjustable, that you can like turn all the way down just to give them a little bit of heat if you need to do this. I did not use any heat pads because again, it was just an 11-hour drive. They're fine for one day without that extra heat. I also did not feed them that morning, so they didn't have any food to digest that day. But other than that, it's okay if they have one day without heat. If they were in the wild, there would be days that it is dreary and rainy and not super hot and sunny outside. It's okay. They're going to be okay for one day. But obviously, if this is going to be a 3-day long journey, that's really excessive. But if it's going to be a super long journey, or if you feel like your animal needs it, you can give it to them. Just make sure that you do it in a safe way. But something you probably should do, especially if you are transporting wet animals, animals that like a lot of humidity. So we're talking crested geckos, cave geckos, any New Caledonian gecko, honestly, any kind of frogs, anything like that. Make sure that you aren't just putting them in a bin. Make sure you're putting them in a bin with like wet paper towels. That way they have the ability to have moisture. They're used to being in wet tanks all the time. We don't want to just throw them into a dry enclosure, a dry bin, and be like, good luck. You don't want to do that. So make sure you have some wet paper towels in there. Okay, so now let's just quickly talk about some of the things that I personally would have done differently with my move. Obviously, there are probably a lot more strategies. Leave them in the comments below if you have them. You'll help somebody else out. These are just, this whole video is just based off the experience that I just had. So obviously I'm gonna forget a lot. But let's talk about things that I would have done differently, which isn't a lot, honestly. Like I said, we had the animals in temporary, like throwawayable tanks at our temporary house. So we just got like cheap 40 gallons and put them in there because it was just for a few weeks. So yes, the animals did have to downgrade for a few weeks, but then that allowed us to ship the rest of these really nice big tanks. This is actually the stack that goes on that. It just doesn't fit. It allowed us to ship because we use pods to ship all of our stuff. So we were able to just pack these away in pods. So I like the way that we ended up doing that. It took up a lot more room in the room that we were temporarily staying in, but in the long run, it worked out better because we were able just to leave those tanks. The one thing that I would have done differently is I would have, I guess, kept in mind more so that corn snakes are escape artists, because our corn snake escaped twice in the car on the way here. The first time, it was because he was in a locking sterilite bin, but there was a tiny hole in the screen that he ripped through and made bigger. Luckily, our corn snake likes people, and so when he escapes, he always seeks out people. I guess the second time that the corn snake escaped, it's because we put him, or didn't put him, in a little cat carrier, a little bunny carrier. There was a tiny hole in that. Corn snake found it and shoved his head through it and almost escaped. So the biggest thing that I would change is just keeping in mind that colubrids are in fact escape artists. Double check, triple check those bins, whatever bin you are going to transport a corn snake, king snake, whatever it is in. Make sure that there are no areas where that animal is going to get out. Make sure the screens are solid. Make sure you can't break through or pull it. Make sure that there's no gaps in the lining of that sterilite bin. Make sure that there are no holes in the cat carrier. Make sure that everything is perfect. And then we're just gonna quickly talk about some things to keep in mind. Number one, once you get your reptile to where it is going, it's probably gonna be really thirsty, especially if you were driving all day. It's gonna be really thirsty. So make sure that you have water for them. For like Zaz, who likes to drink out of the drippy thing, I made sure to sit there for like 15 minutes just giving her water until because she was very stressed out. She didn't want to move. She's fantastic now. She's eating. Everything's good. But she was so stressed out. She didn't want to move. She didn't want to do anything. We put her on the rock and she just like pancaked out. Like she wanted absolutely nothing to do with anything. Every single one of the animals immediately when put into their new tanks found their water bowls and just started chugging water. So they're going to be dehydrated because they're going to be stressed. Unless you get like you could always get those little cheap plastic bowls for like, especially for smaller animals, that you put like condiments in, like in lunch boxes with, and you can put water in them that way. And I mean, yeah, it's still probably gonna spill out and make a mess, but it shouldn't hurt anything if it slides around. Random thought that I had. Okay, so also they're probably not going to want to eat when you get them into their homes, because just like moving new homes, they're going to be stressed out. They were in a bumpy car ride for who knows how many hours. They haven't had water. They probably haven't had anywhere to hide. They've just been in this bin. Foggy bins or black bins, by the way. It's super helpful to make them feel secure. If they don't want to eat, that's fine. Honestly, I didn't feed them when they first got in here. I waited until the next day to offer any food, so I just offered water. I did not offer any food until the next day because I knew that they were going to be too stressed out to eat anyway, so it was just going to be a waste. If you possibly can, having their tank set up already before they get there is going to be very helpful because you're going to be able to transition them a lot smoother. You're gonna be able to just put them in there and the heat and light is already gonna be set to where it needs to be. Just like if you were bringing home an animal for the first time and you want everything set up ahead of time. If you could possibly do that, that's gonna be super helpful. If you can't, super understandable. Not everyone can do that because that was just a very lucky thing that we were able to do. But if you can, it is helpful. And again, I just want to reiterate, if you are moving them in their tanks, make sure there is nothing heavy that is going to fall or slide around and injure that animal. That is insanely important. So keep a check on that. But that is it. That is all I have for this week's video. Thank you so much to Paul for the suggestion over on Patreon. I feel like I just feel so much better today. Like the last few videos, I haven't filmed in over a month. Yeah, over a month. And those last videos, I was not doing great. I had people ask me if I was okay. I was watching the videos. I was like, I was not, apparently. Feeling super better. Feeling a whole lot better now that we've settled in and all the moving stress and animal rehoming stress and all that is settled. I'm feeling better. So yeah, that is it though. That's all I have for this week's video. If you have moved with reptiles, please leave any suggestions or tips or hints or whatever in the comments below because you will help people out that may be in that same situation. As I said at the beginning of this video is sponsored by I Heart Geckos. I Heart Geckos, awesome company. They make conversion kits for reptiles. Super easy. You just stick the conversion kit into a glass tank, silicone it, let it dry out, make sure it doesn't smell like silicone anymore, and then you have a front opening tank with lots of ventilation for your critter. If you do have an order from iheartgeckos.com, make sure to leave Elle's Reptiles in the How Did You Hear About Us box. That way they know that you guys are coming from here. Thank you so much to I Heart Geckos for sponsoring this portion of the video. As always, if you have not already, please feel free to follow me on our socials and like, subscribe, and hit the bell for notifications every single time I put a new video, which is every other Sunday. I'm gonna try to do more, but right now it's every other Sunday, and sometimes I do shorts on Wednesdays. This week's YouTube comment section shout out is here. Thank you so much for commenting and liking, sharing, following, subscribing, all that jazz. You are the bee's knees. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you have a fantastic day. Bye. All right. Get my notes up. I wonder if you can see all those boxes up there. All right. Yeah, but if you can transport them in the tanks, a lot of times that's gonna make things. Okay, can't breathe. But if you can't, June. Okay, before we get started, things like that. So I moved I should have been better prepared. I moved 3 snakes. 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 lizards and okay. Yeah, okay, so here. Okay.